Is former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum a fake conservative? CNN moderator John King asked Congressman Ron Paul in the February 22nd CNN GOP presidential debate in Mesa, Arizona.
Congressman Paul, you've questioned the fiscal conservative credentials of all these gentlemen, but particularly this week, Senator Santorum. You have a new television ad that labels him a fake. Why?
Because he's a fake.
I'm real, Ron. I'm real.
Congratulations.
I'm real. Thank you.
No, I find it really fascinating that when people are running for office, they're really fiscally conservative. When they're in office, they do something different. And then when they explain themselves, they say, oh, I want to repeal that. So the senator voted for No Child Left Behind, but now he voted for it, but now he's running on the effort to get rid of it. So I think the record is so bad, with the politicians. And, nobody accuses me of not having voted for too much. They're always accusing me for not voting for enough.
Santorum acknowledged he now backs the repeal of programs he had voted for as a senator, including No Child Left Behind.
I've made a mistake, and I will not make that mistake again.
Santorum said of the No Child Left Behind bureaucracy,
well, you know what? I supported No Child Left Behind. I supported it. It was the principal priority of President Bush to try to take on a failing education system and try to impose some sort of testing regime that would be able to quantify how well we're doing with respect to education. I have to admit, I voted for that. It was against the principles I believed in, but when you're part of the team, sometimes you take one for the team for the leader, and I made a mistake.
Santorum also faced criticism on his backing for funding for contraceptives. On voting to give money to Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider for contraceptives, Santorum explained,
I've always opposed Title X funding, but it's included in a large appropriation bill that includes a whole host of other things, including the funding for the National Institutes of Health, the funding for Health and Human Services, and a whole bunch of other departments. It's a multi-billion-dollar bill.
Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney didn't accept Santorum's explanation.
Senator, I just saw a YouTube clip of you being interviewed where you said that you personally opposed contraceptives, but that you said that you voted for Title X. But you used that as an argument, saying this is something I did proactively. You didn't say this is something I was opposed to. It was something I would have done. You said this in a positive light. I voted for Title X.
Indeed, Santorum did boast in a Fox News Channel interview less than a week earlier that he had voted for federal contraceptives funding, including funding to Planned Parenthood.
When you have 40% of kids being born out of wedlock, and among certain ethnic groups, the vast majority being born out of wedlock, you ask yourself, how are we going to have a society in the future? Because these kids are raised in poverty in many cases. They are in abusive settings. The likelihood of them being able to finish high school or college drops dramatically in single-family homes. And we haven't been willing to talk about this. And when we have programs that say we're going to teach abstinence in schools, the liberals go crazy.
Santorum then engaged in a rambling, contradictory explanation of his vote during the February 22nd debate.
I think I was making it clear that while I have a personal more objection to it, even though I don't support it, that I voted for bills that included it. And I made it very clear in subsequent interviews that I don't support that. I've never supported it, and on an individual basis have voted against it. That's why I proposed Title 20 to counterbalance it.
Santorum also stressed that he had proposed a new federal program to promote abstinence education, Title 20.
I said, well, if you're going to have Title 10 funding, then we're going to create something called Title 20. Which is going to provide funding for abstinence-based programs. I voted for large appropriation bills, and there were things in there I didn't like, things in there I did. But when it came to this issue, I proactively stepped forward and said that we need to do something at least to counterbalance it, A. B, I would say that I've always been very public, that as President of the United States, I will defund Planned Parenthood. I will not sign any appropriation bill that funds Planned Parenthood.
Senator, go ahead.
John, this demonstrates the problem that I'm talking about. There's always an excuse to do this.
Paul countered that Title 20 was just another centralized big government federal program that was not authorized by the U.S. Constitution.
Title 20, I don't know whether you inferred that I would support Title 20 for abstinence. No, it would cost money as a program. It's not a program of the federal government to get involved in our lives this way. If you want laws like that, maybe to say, but the federal government shouldn't even be spending money on abstinence. That's way too much more. I don't see that in the Constitution anyways.
Santorum's defense of his conservative credentials took the form of citing comparative ratings by Washington, D.C. Beltway conservative organizations.
Ron, the Weekly Standard just did a review looking at the national taxpayer unions, I think Citizens Against Government Waste, and they measured me up against the other 50 senators who were serving when I did, and they said that I was the most fiscally conservative senator in the Congress in the 12 years that I was there. My ratings with the national taxpayer unions were A's or B's. They were very high from the Citizens Against Government Waste. I got a Hero Award. I was a leader, as you know, on taking on tough issues, which is the entitlement programs, not just welfare reform, but I also worked on Medicare reform and Medicaid reform, and also was a leader on trying to deal with Social Security. And I did that not representing one of the most conservative districts in the state of Texas, but in the state of Pennsylvania, with the second largest per capita population of seniors in the country. And I can tell you, those seniors really cared about Social Security. Why? Because all my rich seniors moved to Florida and Arizona. And what's left in Pennsylvania is folks who relied on Social Security. And I was out there as a Republican senator, a conservative voting record, over a 90% conservative voting record from the American Conservative Union. By the way, Ron, you ranked 145th in the bottom half of Republicans this year in a conservative voting record from that same organization.
But Congressman Paul countered.
That's always a cop-out when you compare yourself to the other members of Congress. The American people are sick and tired of the members of Congress. They get about 9% rating.
The Texas congressman and obstetrician stressed that many of those conservative ratings gave him lower marks for voting against foreign aid and bills that would curb individual liberties, such as the Patriot Act.
If it's spending or on taxes, I'm at the very top because I vote for the least amount of spending and the least amount of taxes, which means that some of the conservative ratings, you have to realize, sometimes conservatives want to spend money too. When it comes to overseas spending, you vote for the foreign aid. Conservatives are quite pleased with spending money overseas, but if you're a strict fiscal conservative and a constitutionalist, you don't vote for that kind of stuff, and so you can't just go by the ratings.
The February 22nd Republican debate in Mesa, Arizona does show that Rick Santorum has a far more conservative rhetoric than he does a conservative record. When it comes to spending money on programs that are not authorized under the U.S. Constitution, but are prohibited under the 10th Amendment, such as voting for money for contraceptives, abstinence education, and foreign aid.